Okay. I have been planning to do this video for, oh God, years, maybe. Let's see. Kind of get comfortable. So, good morning, good evening, good night, whenever you're watching this video. And I want to talk a little bit about these times that we're living in, and my experience, that I've had with spirituality, because that's mainly the main thing I like to talk about so much. But my path, let me move, because actually it's true. I want to be more comfortable so I don't have to hold the phone. Okay, this is where I was earlier. This is just like the best setup. I'm just going to start always just doing my videos in here. Okay. Okay, like I was saying, where to begin? I feel like this is the interview. I'm treating this like an interview. So like I was saying, my experience with spirituality in my path. So spirituality serves the purpose, I think, always of addressing and supporting you in your present experiences. The things that come up as a challenge, the things that you would like to see or, manifest in your life. Closer. Okay. The things that you would like to see and manifest in your life. To overcome enemies, to overcome negative forces that come around you from within, from just adversity, to the things that you are going through and the goals that you set forth in your life, and reaching your destiny and manifesting your destiny. All of these things, spirituality is supposed to serve to support you. And so, like so many Black women in America, I saw somewhat, it's the jury's out on if it still is, but for the purposes of this discussion, I'll say saw. I saw being a single Black woman that was unmarried as a challenge to manifesting fullness of being happy, in the picture that I have for my life. So, I saw it as something that spirituality ultimately can serve to support you with, to help you attract what you are looking for in terms of marriage. If you want to get married, if you want a boyfriend, spirituality is there to support you with your manifestations and the things that you want. And one of the things that I came across in my research, I'm just trying to understand, myself and the experiences I was having, of course, and spirituality and what it had to offer me. Meeting a lot of roadblocks and closed doors will often kind of lead you down paths that are unscripted and are there for a purpose, to give you a broader wealth of experiences. So anyway, going through some, materials I come across and doing research online, came across one particular spiritual practitioner, very powerful man. His name was Chief Amashi in the Atlanta area. A lot of people knew Chief Amashi. A lot of people loved him. There were a few people that hated him. There's a score of mixed reviews about who the man was. I am not someone who had an extensive amount of time in my experience with him. I was one of the folks. I think it was only six of us. I was one of those six that went on that last spiritual activity that he did, which was the Mami Wata retreat. The foundation of how that came about. Um, he spent a lot of time discussing and putting out material, which is actually still out there, on how Black women in America not being married is a curse. It's a hex. It's an ancestral hex. It's a curse. And oftentimes, if you go, even right now to this day, if you go to West Africa, in Nigeria, in Ghana, and I have those are two I'm most familiar with, but I've in Cameroon and just in so many cultures throughout West Africa. The idea that if you are not married, it is by default some type of hex or curse. It is you're being followed by a water spirit. It's the marine spirit that is captivated you in your destiny. That's really big actually in the Christian churches in West Africa. I couldn't tell you what vein of the denominations that's coming out of, but that whole marine kingdom water spirit thing, which it's interesting stuff. But either way, they would definitely ascribe in West Africa. They would ascribe a young woman who being well qualified per se, not being married, as being some type of ancestral curse or a hex. Now, for so many women that are frustrated, confused, angry, even about the experiences that she's had in doing all that, for better or worse, give or take, fundamentally showing up, being available, and doing all that, you can to show that, you bring a lot to the table, and your love is real and your support is genuine. Despite all of that, it doesn't, there seems to be something that always doesn't click and doesn't work. I've come to understand what that is now, but some would say, in spiritual circles, that that's a hex. Now, what Chief Amashi proposed in his spiritual experience in working with Mami Wata is that she would, in the spiritual component of it, would work through that ancestral trauma and would cleanse that to such a way that it would be lifted, and the hex that is on Black women in America that seems to be so dominant and persistent will be lifted with this work with Mami Wata and this initiation. So that time being so, I want to say, so hungry for this solution that I felt would be the final block in my life. Some women aren't really their happiest when they're, single fully. So, at that time, it seemed like the solution that was for me. And, when I was in my practice within, when I was working within my practice within a certain E-lane that was in Atlanta, I remember Robert saying in that reading that, Ifa says you're going to get married, but you haven't met him yet. And so I always had that in the back of my mind, like, but after 5 years with no results, I felt it was some kind of hex. But being frustrated with not really having much support, and not really having the opportunity to be real hands-on and interactive with spirit, what Chief Amashi is, what that spiritual path is all about, was so appealing to me. Is still appealing to me. Obviously, the direct connection with nature, beyond bounds, beyond anything that you could practice in a room. To take your practice actually to nature, take your petitions actually to nature, is powerful. But that's another discussion. That particular offering from Chief Amashi at that time was about, really trying to cleanse that ancestral cloud that was keeping you as a Black woman from getting married. So, went through the whole ritual, had an interesting dream or two that came up shortly after. And I definitely will make another video about this. I don't want to necessarily, it's two different discussions, but long story short, directly from that ritual, I met a guy. He was, directly from Ghana. How eerie, directly from the same tribe, from the same spiritual system that we had just practiced with. No idea Chief Amashi was actually directly connected in his initiations from the same tribe and people. So here this guy comes, and he, was great, and he was my fiance. We got engaged. Problem is, it was like so many other situations. The cultural differences in the present day that we're in wasn't quite something that I think he had the tools to really support him with that. I'm an American. I live in America. I don't live there. And so that presented its challenges too. Like I said, this conversation really isn't about that. I guess this is really about what the whole experience taught me from that relationship. And it really has me taking a step back further to really look at, what is the larger lesson that mother, that spirit is trying to show me, Fundamentally, look, for what it's worth, if you think yourself hexed or whatever in regards to being married or engaged, quick and fast and in a hurry. I can go back to West Africa now and be engaged next month. Facts. But that's not what this is about. What the experience taught me, this perception of being hexed, why you haven't manifested marriage up to this point. It's because you have standards. I have standards, principles, values, and morals that even as subconsciously as I might try to throw them away, when it comes to the rubber meeting the road, I'll stand by it. And my relationships with those types always seem to fall away. And this is the thing, that's the trick. Like, is it, well, you're just attracting all these men that are against your, set against your values? I've looked at that. I've examined that. Is there a bit of an attraction thing, law of attraction thing going on? Maybe, but I think more than that, there's a fundamental shift in the culture that we're in as it relates to how men see women. I think that based off of my outward appearance of who I am physically, my fate was decided long before I was even aware of the likelihood of me, quote unquote, getting married would be impacted by the perception that I was unaware of, that I had to come into an understanding about as I begin to ask questions and open my perception to understand the perception of a man in masculinity and how, as a result, I am seen and taken in and received. Does that take anything away from how I should continue to look at myself and hold myself up? Absolutely not. But I should be sober minded in what that means as well. Um, Based off of the things that appeal to men and who I am as a woman, you know, for within the the culture we find ourselves in now in America is a challenge. Um, I think obviously West African men are always receptive and open to meeting a woman who insists on honoring culture, who insists on offering um, support and love, who understands the principle of submission, however, will not be led into West Hell. Um, but all of those things are received, and it's the person. It's being willing to call a thing a thing. It's about being willing to have the courage to honor some level of standard and value, not going with the guy that you attract and then hoping for the best, because that never quite turns out well. Whereas if you lead with intent and presence, I believe the result will be different. But however, I still believe West African men to be most receptive. Just being honest, based off of my experience. So that was a long lesson. It's like, was I ever hexed or cursed? No. Am I don't want to say a victim because we're never a victim, but am I a witness of the present times that we're in? Absolutely. Am I a casualty of it? Yeah, a little, you know. But does that mean that I'm hexed? Is there an ancestral curse? No, I think there's an ancestral blessing over not being caught up in relationships that would probably absolutely destroy me and either lead me to a mental institution, jail, or have me 6 feet under. I think it's probably a blessing. So if that means the marine spirit is harboring me and hindering me from marriage, it's been for my own good. Emotional reaction to disrespect and abuse is healthy and normal and is to be celebrated, certainly not demonized. And if that means that you never get married because every man you meet, your spirit is automatically into, then that's just what it means. Because some women in some lifetimes say, not this time. You're not going to be a victim this time. And if you knew anything about what the Mami Wata spirit was about, at least as it's kind of represented in America, it's about the intense protection of women and children beyond what you can imagine. And it was a 360 lesson. If I ever was hexed, I'm certainly am not now. And I can definitely tell you I'm not from this point moving forward in the future. So I want to cry. Uh, it's a sweet, sweet spirit. Divine restorative justice. And the ultimate matchmaker. She'll give you the man that you need to help you see all that you need to know. So that's my thought on it all. At the end of the day, you know, Chief Amashi died. Yeah. So many speculations about what that could be about. That's another story for another day. Do I think he had a full understanding of what she is about? No. I was there with him when we had those discussions. We kind of asked about it and talked about it. You know, divine protective women never came out. You know, and also what I'll say is this. The spirit of Mami Wata, when I at least was in Ghana, she represents power. Just pure, unbridled power. And it's like, if you're not tuned in to the radio stations that even resonate with needing that kind of power, you won't pick it up. You know, I'm not a woman who needs to go through the streets commanding absolute domination, authority and power. But there are some that do. And it's all about the intent, obviously. And I think that the intent oftentimes in men versus the intent with women can be different. It can be different. I think also a woman's experience that is from America, an African American's experience, versus, you know, a woman's experience that is actually, you know, from Ghana or from the Cameroon, might have a different perspective of it. They might. I haven't had the opportunity to have those conversations. But I look forward to it. And so that's really just kind of a testimony that I have, not only for spirit, but just also the whole relationship thing, how far I went down the rabbit hole to explore this phenomenon. Just discover that you are not alone, that all that just to discover. You could have clicked onto YouTube and you could have clicked onto some you could have clicked into some groups that had, you know, a collective experience that would have helped me shine my eye and get a greater perspective, instead of just automatically assuming that, you know, I'm cursed. If I'm cursed, then what's that statistic? If I'm cursed, then 60% of other African American women that are unmarried they don't have any kids, I guess they're also cursed as well. And there are some spiritualists, some men that would absolutely have you believe that. But based off of the moral discussion, the discussion of character, it's called Iwe Pele. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Iwe Pele, you know, in Yoruba and Ifa is so important. Is everything, you know? And that's really the measure. And because a lot of women are willing to compromise that and let that slide and slack, and, you know, they dip here, dip there with it, you know, some women are not. I've tried, and at the end of the day, my values will pop out, and it'll be, you know, stop, screech brakes. And it'll look like a curse. And it's not. It's just, you got some strong ancestral spirits and some strong intuition that will not allow bullshit to go down in your watch. That's all. So, some will call it hex, others will call it blessing. I'm about to call it a blessing and roll with it. And so that's it. So I'm so glad to finally share that and get that out. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And I'll see you in the next video.